to me, trams are a very, very interesting subject. They're not quite trains, but they are a hell of a lot more than buses, and a hell of a lot more than buses ever could be. They seem to bridge that gap in between the two of them, where heavy rail system isn't really demanded, there's not really the space and money for it, but a more permanent and reliable solution is needed over buses. And it hasn't always been like this though. If you take one look at older tram systems, classic tramways if you will, such as Budapest, Prague or even Blackpool, you'll notice that these tramways are very, very different from what we're used to today. If you look at the stations, they're not really even stations, they're more like stops, more like bus stops, and the routes are concentrated almost entirely on the street. And this is quite different to what we're used to nowadays with modern tramways, such as the Manchester Metrolink, the Cologne Stadtbahn, or even maybe the Croydon Tramlink, which, as you can see, have a lot more open track sections, usually converted from past railway lines, which are now closed, and also feature, lots of very complex track diagrams and sections, such as bridges and arches and steep inclines, very different to what they used to be like. But what happened to all of our older tramways? We used to have loads of them, and why are tramways so different nowadays? Well, there used to be hundreds of tramways, big and small, all over Britain, and basically almost every major town or city, you name it, had a tramway of some sort, and if you take a little bit of a look into history, it's clear to see why. Early tramways were essentially the best answer Victorian Britain had to any urban transport at all. At the time there were no combustion engines, no engines at all, so cars and buses were essentially non-existent other than horse-drawn omnibuses. But early trams kind of were just more efficient. They were better than omnibuses were because they could run on the rails, they were easier for horses to pull, they had a much smoother ride because they weren't bumping up and down on cobbles. They are essentially what city buses are today, and this would continue even after trams were electrified at the turn of the 20th century. And there were loads of these tramways all across the country. London, Liverpool and Glasgow are all massive examples of really, really large and developed systems. I mean, London was once the world's largest tramway, had loads of lines, and Glasgow was the largest in the country outside of London, so yeah, you can see a massive, massive sense of scale there. But that wasn't the only examples. Plenty of other towns and cities all had tramways of their own. Bolton, Leeds, Sunderland, Burnley, Chesterfield, Wolverhampton, Bradford, Norwich, Exeter, Plymouth, Blackpool, Portsmouth, Southend, Aberdeen, Cardiff, Dover, you name it, many, many, many more. And if you look at these cities now, Leeds has nothing now. Leeds, in fact, is the largest city in Europe without any mass transport at all, and I think that definitely needs to be changed. But this makes you beg the question, now that these cities have almost no transport at all, what happened to all of these tramways? Where did they go? Why don't we have them anymore? Well, there's no really conclusive answer to this, but due to the short-sightedness of town planners between the 1930s and 1950s, it was decided that our remaining tramways should probably be replaced with diesel motor buses, which at the time were seen as much more efficient and better than our good old trams. And so for the most part, our tramways were ripped up and dismantled, with the once grand Glasgow Corporation tramway being the last to close in 1962. So basically, yeah, we just ripped them all up and that was the end of tramways. All with the one exception of Blackpool, for some reason. I don't know why. Do classic tramways even still have a place in modern Britain? To some extent yes, and to some extent no. It's been acknowledged that trams create urban growth. They create perceived permanence for the user because whenever they see rails they think, this isn't going away anytime soon, I can ride this as much as I like, and that encourages more people to ride them. It allows services to run much more efficiently by having all these dedicated lines, and many tramways can have dedicated sections in between roads on boulevards. You find this in cities all across the globe still, in Poland, in Prague, in Hungary, whatever. All over the world, even in Germany and Czechia, still has plenty of this. Fixed routes also give passengers a mental map of the city they serve. Think about it with the London Underground. Many people literally know London based off the tube. The Circle Line defines central London in that kind of way. But also, trams are more trusted by passengers than buses are. Buses usually are perceived by people as being cheap, bad, just, you know, underfunded, and I can vouch for this. Many people think buses in this way. And while we do have newer buses, electric buses, often some buses are actually really nice. If you go into London and Reading these days, they have some great buses there. Many people just don't feel compelled to ride them at all. Trams, however, on the most part, are much cleaner than buses and are much more attractive to passengers, and so bring in many more people than buses would. Even if the audience was already there, the trams are bringing these people in who would have needed to travel between these locations anyways. So really, trams are just a win-win in almost every single scenario. Many urban bus routes in city centres along corridors on massive long streets could easily be replaced by trams. I mean, think of how many overcrowded bus routes there are in cities, which if they were replaced by trams could have just as frequent service, but carry so much more people, so much more efficiently. I mean, it would be fantastic. I mean, if you look at the bus routes that you find in cities, many are actually converted from past tramways. And you can look at almost every city and large town which once had a tramway, look at the main routes that tramways had, and there will almost always be a bus route which almost does the exact same thing. There are so many places in cities where a new tramway could easily be reinstated. I mean, look at this example. This boulevard in Southend would be perfect for a tramway. And actually, the reason why is because this was once where the Southend Corporation trams used to actually run along. There was a tramway running right down this boulevard here. And wouldn't it just be fantastic if this could come back? It would paint such a lovely picture of our country. It would be fantastic if our towns and cities could have these again. Imagine the growth. It would be great. So I think it would be very nice to see the return of classic tramways replacing the overcrowded bus routes in our towns and cities. It could boost tourism, local pride, the economy, and also the mood of the people who live there. I mean, could you imagine if London got its trams back, or Liverpool with its, you know, extensive network? If cities like Prague and Budapest are able to operate efficient and well-used tram services down classic tramways, as I call them, then so can we. Anyways, thanks for watching. I know this video isn't quite like my normal content, but I was quite passionate on this subject and I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye, I'll see you in the next one.